Darren, it's the middle of May, and today we're going to talk about the HxC floppy disk emulator. But first, a step back and to remember what went before the HxC floppy disk emulator. Again, this has all been done on my Cromemco computer system, obviously. So let's look at the picture in front of you, and what we have are two sets of diskettes. This is the 5 1/4 inch diskette, and this is the 3 1/2 inch diskette. The 3 1/2 inch diskette was never natively used on a Cromemco system because it was far too new. What was actually used in first and foremost was the 8 inch diskette, which as you can imagine is an 8 inch size diskette, so that's much bigger than this 5 1/4 inch beastie. So when 8 inch diskettes first came out, they were limited to 250 kilobytes per diskette, and they followed something called the IBM standard, but that soon became obsoleted and improved upon. So we had something called double density, and then we had something called double sided. So we went from 250k bytes per diskette up to about 1.2 megabytes per diskette. And actually that was a pretty big space back in the day. So when 5 1/4 inch diskettes hit the scene, they were something of a little bit of a disappointment to those of us who were already using 8 inch diskettes at 1.2 meg, because on Cromemco systems at least, you could only get a maximum of 360k, so in other words a quarter the size. So if you were to adopt the newer technology, you'd go down from 1.2 megabytes to 360 kilobytes per diskette. So it was a little bit unsatisfactory, and for that reason, back in the day, I continued to use 1.2 megabyte 8 inch drives as long as possible. So in 2001, this media, 8 inch drive media, now is almost impossible to get hold of. 5 1/4 inch 360k media is difficult to get hold of, but I'll tell you what is reasonably easy to get hold of is 3 1/2 inch drive media. So there is a way, which has been documented, to use these drives to simulate an 8 inch drive, because these drives natively have got 80 tracks. They can spin at 360 RPM of the 8 inch drive, and so you can use these diskettes to behave like an 8 inch drive. So that's a pretty good solution, but it's a solution that isn't going to last way into the future. So enter the HxC floppy diskette emulator. So let's look at the internals of the machine, and I'm going to point out where it is and what it does. So this is the 64 FDC diskette controller. It's got various different ports. That's the floppy port, there's the 8 inch drive port, and there's the serial port along which I can issue commands to make the system boot. And as you see, that floppy cable goes to the back. It actually goes to all of the 3 physical diskette drives here. And in particular, it goes to the HxC unit here, and that's able to simulate 2 diskette drives. And it can do that very precisely. I'll explain that in a second. Now, in the vintage world, I would say that the person that has come to mind is a Polish gentleman called, let's get it right, HxC. And he actually physically makes these boards and sells them either bare boards or in a nice case. So I've bought one in a nice case. So remember the name, HxC, Google that name, and you'll be able to buy yourself an HxC floppy disk emulator. So that unit can emulate 2 diskettes. As you can see, I've put it's emulating drive C and drive A. So let's look at the front. Okay. So as you can see, there's an SD card onto which you're going to put files. So you can format this on a PC with a fat file system, and you're going to need to create an HFE file, something ending in .hfe, and that's going to be a special format that HxC recognizes. So again, in the industry, what's happened is that someone called Dave Dunsfield created the image disk program, and the image disk program is a very clever program that it's able to record, given some reference hardware. It can record what's on a diskette, and it can record the exact sectors that are on the diskette, the actual space between the sectors, the exact RPM of the floppy drive as it's rotating, as it read that sector. And so it can make an accurate record in a special image disk format, IMD format, of your diskette drive. And then the idea is you can run that IMD file through utility and convert it to HFE. So what I've got for my systems is I've made a laborious IMD copy of all the physical diskettes that I had in IMD format. They're now on the GitHub, the Cromemco's GitHub. And then you can take the HxC emulation program and ask it to convert all the IMD images into HFE. And that's what's being done. So you take then one or more of those images, put it onto the SD card, and then with the system started here, you're going to need to press a button here to select the file. It says choose a file, and I can go up and down. Can't remember which number I'm going for here. 524. Right, 693c168.fe. That's the actual name of the file name that I've chosen. I've just given it an 8.3 file name. If you give it a very long file name, you can see you're not going to see it on this display. So I'm going to select that. Then I'm going to press the reset button on the back of the machine. And Cromemco specialists are going to remember what they heard when they heard a Cromemco system boot. And that's because this little HxC emulator's got a tiny little speaker, so it simulates the seeking noise of a physical diskette drive. Are you ready? So we're going to do BA to boot the A drive. And we check. Doing a memory test now, it's doing an extended 68,000 memory test. I'm going to put in the boot device, so one for floppy. I'm going to choose which floppy. FDA is floppy 0, type in a 0 and go. Booted. So there's a few extra sounds, being the background nature of this Unix-like operating system. So there we have it. That's Chromemco booted via the HxC Floppy emulator. I'm just going to do a kill -2 space 1 to do a proper shutdown. System shutdown complete. Okay, Darry, thanks for watching. So remember, if you want to do floppy emulation on a Cromemco system, I highly recommend the HxC Floppy emulator, and you need to Google the Polish guy Loth Arek. Thank you for watching.